Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. The world of Harry Potter adaptations is full of debates and discussions. Too much from the books had to be cut, and some things were invented entirely for the films. Let's talk about these scenes, the ones you won't find in the original books, but that left a lasting impression on viewers. Number 1. Voldemort destroys the protective charms. Hogwarts' defense in the books was much more modest. J.K. Rowling described it without any spectacular barriers, glowing domes, or magical walls. But cinema demands spectacle, so in Deathly Hallows Part 2 we get a mighty scene. Voldemort and his army trying to break through the school's protective enchantments. No words, just grim determination and raw destruction. This moment became the visual peak of tension before the great battle. And the Elder Wand breaking in his hands instantly warns viewers that not everything will go the Dark Lord's way. Number 2. The bridge explosion. In the book, there's only a brief mention of Neville fighting snatchers on the bridge. The film turned this into an epic sequence. Neville, Seamus, and Ginny working together to plant explosives and blow up the bridge with Professor McGonagall's approval. The spectacle of destruction underlines the cost of resistance. Many Death Eaters didn't die in the explosion itself, but plunged into the cold abyss. This scene mixes the horror of war and the school kids' heroism in a particularly striking way. Number 3. Harry and Snape's confrontation. Deathly Hallows Part 2 gave us a tense confrontation between Harry and Snape in the Great Hall. In front of the entire school, Harry steps forward and makes his accusations, a very dramatic, emotional scene. Alan Rickman masterfully played Snape, whose face showed a mix of anger, bitterness, and hidden pain. In the book, this moment is far more understated. Harry hides under the invisibility cloak and watches as Snape duels 3 professors at once. But the movie chose to make their duel a centerpiece, ensuring it would be unforgettable. Number 4. Harry and Hermione's dance. A warm, touching moment from Deathly Hallows Part 1, where Harry and Hermione dance in the tent, was created specifically for the film. They're exhausted, crushed by loss, and unsure what to do next. The dance is their way of shaking off the weight of responsibility for just a moment and remembering they're still friends, still human. Some saw romantic undertones here, others just pure support. But whatever the interpretation, it fit beautifully into the atmosphere of hopelessness and the search for hope. Number 5. Bellatrix Lestrange at the Burrow and the Astronomy Tower. Helena Bonham Carter brought Bellatrix Lestrange to life so vividly that the filmmakers decided to give her more screen time. In Half-Blood Prince, 2 new scenes were added: the attack on the Burrow, a strange but moody and tense addition, and Bellatrix's presence at the Astronomy Tower events. These inserts added darker tones and reminded viewers that the war wasn't confined to the school's walls, but reached the heroes' very homes. Number 6. Death Eaters in the London Sky. Half-Blood Prince is generally rich in scenes that weren't in the book. Instead of the meeting between the Muggle Prime Minister and the Minister for Magic, viewers got a terrifying Death Eater raid. Black silhouettes fly over London, leaving chaos and destruction behind. It's extremely cinematic, but not very canonical, since in the books Death Eaters couldn't fly like that. Nevertheless, the scene powerfully highlights the terror Voldemort and his followers spread even in the Muggle world. Number 7. Harry and the Cafe Girl. Half-Blood Prince begins with an unexpected scene. Harry sitting in a train station cafe, flirting with a waitress, even arranging a date. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the plot, Dumbledore abruptly interrupts and whisks Harry away on urgent business. This moment shows Harry not as the savior of the world, but as an ordinary teenager with normal hopes and dreams, making the looming darkness feel all the more brutal by contrast. Number 8. Lupin and Harry talking on the bridge. The wind whipped over the narrow wooden bridge outside the Burrow. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 1, Remus Lupin stood with Harry Potter in the cold night. His eyes were shadowed, his voice low. "You're the best hope we have," he said. The words weren't a comfort. They were a burden. Harry looked away, jaw tight. He didn't want to be hope. He just wanted the war to end. In the book, their argument burned hotter. Rowling wrote, "I'm sorry you don't like your job, Remus. I'm sorry I don't enjoy being hunted by the Death Eaters." Lupin had burst into Grimmauld Place, desperate to join Harry's quest, willing to abandon Tonks and their unborn child. Harry had lashed out, but the film softened that anger. It gave them a private moment of fear and understanding instead. Two soldiers. About to walk into the dark, David Thewlis played Lupin with weary gravity. He looked at Harry like a father would, wanting to spare him but knowing he couldn't. Daniel Radcliffe's face said everything. He carried too many ghosts already. This short, quiet scene wasn't in the book, but it felt true. It let us see Harry not as the chosen one, but as a boy who knew what he was about to lose. And Lupin, the veteran who already knew too well. Number 9, Neville's speech before the battle. Neville Longbottom stepped forward from the terrified crowd. His robes were torn, blood trickled from a cut on his cheek. Voldemort's voice dripped with triumph as he showed them Harry's lifeless body. Silence fell like a shroud. Then Neville's voice cut through it. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 2, he refused to kneel. "I'm not going to join you," he said, voice shaking but clear. He spoke of Harry's courage, of why they had to keep fighting even if Harry was dead. In the book, this moment was simpler. Rowling wrote, the only person who was still resisting was Neville Longbottom. He tried to charge Voldemort, defiant but without a speech. The film gave him the words of a leader. It let us see the boy who once melted cauldrons in class become the man who inspired an army. Matthew Lewis's performance was raw and real. His eyes burned with grief, but he stood unbroken. As Voldemort watched, sneering, Neville refused to be cowed. He didn't just survive the war, he became its heart. When he drew the sword of Gryffindor and struck down Nagini, the last Horcrux, it was the final answer to his speech. He wasn't Harry, he didn't need to be. He was Neville Longbottom, the boy who proved anyone could be brave. Number 10. Hermione erases her parents' memory. Hermione Granger stood in her parents' living room, wand trembling in her hand. The film gave us every detail, the quiet breathing, the desperate calm on her face. With one whispered obliviate, the pictures on the mantel changed. She vanished from every frame, a ghost erased from their lives. Her mother turned a page in the newspaper. Her father sipped his tea. Neither spared a glance at the girl they no longer remembered. In the book, Rowling described it with brutal simplicity. She had erased herself from her parents' memories. No scene, no screams, just 2 lines explaining the sacrifice. The film insisted we watch it. Emma Watson's eyes brimmed with tears, her voice breaking. It wasn't just a spell, it was goodbye. She was protecting them from a war they couldn't fight. But the cost was her own family. This moment hit harder than any duel. It showed what the war demanded before it even truly began. Hermione wasn't just the cleverest witch of her age. She was the bravest. She chose safety for the people she loved over her own happiness. And in that silent living room, Voldemort's cruelty was clear. Not just in killing, but in stealing the right to be someone's daughter. Number 11. Draco throws Harry his wand. Harry crouched behind fallen stones, breath ragged, his wand lost in the chaos. Voldemort's voice roared through the great hall. Spells cracked overhead like thunder. Then from the shadows, Draco Malfoy's pale face appeared. Their eyes met. No words, just understanding. Draco tossed his wand. It landed at Harry's feet. In the book, there was nothing like it. Rowling wrote, Draco was on the ground, clutching his arm, looking terrified. No act of mercy, no sign of change. But the film chose something different. Tom Felton let Draco's fear show even as he made his choice. His fingers trembled. He hesitated before throwing the wand as if aware of what it meant. This wasn't just survival, it was a betrayal of Voldemort's cause, a silent apology for every moment he'd looked away while others suffered. The camera lingered on Harry's face, surprise, then grim acceptance. He picked up the wand and stood. It was a small rebellion in the heart of war, a single gesture that suggested Draco wasn't lost forever. Fans argued about it for years. Was it enough to redeem him? Did it make up for what he'd done? But the film didn't answer. It only showed a boy who'd seen too much darkness, choosing, for once, to help. And that small, flickering hope was enough. Number 12. Harry snaps the Elder Wand. Harry Potter stood on the crumbling bridge of Hogwarts, holding the Elder Wand in his scarred hand. The battle was over. The air smelled of ash and dawn. In the film, he looked at the wand that had caused so much death and power lust. Then with a single sharp motion he snapped it in half. The pieces fell from his fingers, tumbling into the abyss. It was final. It was clear. Harry would never let that kind of power exist again. In J.K. Rowling's book, the moment was quieter, almost reverent. Harry said, "I'm putting it back where it came from." He opened Dumbledore's tomb and laid the Elder Wand across the dead man's chest. He intended for the wand's power to die with him. No snapping, no drama, just a promise that if he died a natural death, no one could claim it. It was subtle, controlled, but the film chose a stronger image. Daniel Radcliffe's face was firm with resolve. There was anger in his eyes, but also release. When he broke the wand, the sharp crack echoed off the ruins. Hermione Granger gasped, and Ron Weasley stared. It was raw. It was a rejection not just of the wand, but of everything Voldemort had lived for. Immortality, domination, fear. Harry wanted none of it. He chose the fragile peace of an unarmed man. That change sparked debate among fans. Some argued it erased the layered meaning of Harry's choice in the book. But on screen, it worked. It was a single, unforgettable act of defiance, a message to the world. There would be no more Dark Lords, no more Deathly Hallows, just Harry, a boy who lived, who fought, and who was finally free. Number 13, Final Farewell on the Hogwarts Bridge. The film Deathly Hallows Part 2 gave us one last quiet breath before the epilogue. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger stood on the broken bridge outside Hogwarts. The battle was over. The castle still smouldered behind them. Their faces were tired, marked by loss, but they held that moment together. No words, just the three of them side by side, looking into a future they had saved. In the book there is no such scene. Rowling writes simply, "The sun rose steadily over Hogwarts, and the great hall blazed with golden light. It was triumphant, but brief." In the novel, the aftermath is sparse. The bodies lie in the hall. Harry walks among them, feeling the weight of everyone lost. There's no lingering farewell for the trio. Instead, Harry tells Voldemort's story, repairs his own wand, and heads straight to the epilogue, 19 years later. No pause to see three friends say goodbye to their war. No moment to see them just be. The film needed to show it. Director David Yates chose to hold us there. Let us see Harry's eyes soften as he turned to Hermione, see Ron's hand brush against hers. Three friends who had carried the world on their shoulders, now breathing like ordinary people again. You could almost hear them thinking, "We made it." It wasn't in the script for the book, but it was written on their faces. That addition changed the ending. It closed the door on the war with quiet dignity. It reminded us what they fought for. Each other. Even in silence, it spoke volumes about loyalty and love. It wasn't canon, but it felt true. It was the final promise before they stepped away from childhood forever. Number 14, Fleur and Bill. During the attack on the wedding at the Burrow was meant to be a moment of hope. In the book Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling describes it with terrifying chaos, the screams of terror, the stampede, the flashes of green light. There is no time for tender goodbyes. Guests scatter. Harry, under Polyjuice Potion, flees with Ron and Hermione without even a look back. The attack is sudden and merciless, a stark reminder that Voldemort's reach is everywhere. The film chooses to slow time for a heartbeat. Flames consume the Burrow, the night filled with frantic shouts. But there, in the middle of it all, Bill Weasley, Domhnall Gleeson, and Fleur Delacour, Clémence Poésy, clutch each other. Their embrace is fierce, faces lit by fire, they refuse to let go. It's a striking choice, forcing the viewer to see not just panic, but love fighting to exist when the world collapses. This invented moment doesn't appear in Rowling's pages, but on screen it stands out. Instead of the faceless crowd's terror, the camera lingers on Fleur's tearful determination and Bill's protective arm. It's the eye of the storm, two people who just vowed until death do us part, proving they mean it. Viewers feel that promise in their silence. The change gives the audience a reason to care beyond survival. It transforms nameless fear into personal tragedy. Love isn't just threatened, it burns alongside the Burrow. In that instant, we see exactly what the heroes are fighting for. Even as the Death Eaters tear the sky apart, Bill and Fleur remind us of what must be saved. Number 15, McGonagall awakens the statues. Professor Minerva McGonagall strode through the halls of Hogwarts, her robes snapping at her heels. Outside, thunder rumbled. She raised her wand toward the towering suits of armor and stone knights lining the corridor. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 2, her voice rang out, strong and unyielding. "Pia totum locomotor!" Stone cracked and joints groaned. The statues shuddered to life, drawing great swords and shields. They turned to her as one, awaiting orders. She smiled, just a flicker. "I've always wanted to use that spell," she admitted to Molly Weasley beside her. The line was pure magic, a moment of levity that showed McGonagall was not only fierce, but human. The statues crashed to the ground and marched out through the castle gates, their heavy footfalls shaking the floor. Watching them form ranks on the battlements was like seeing the school itself rise to defend its children. In the book, this scene was quieter, less grand. Rowling wrote, "Teachers and ghosts were hurrying to help reinforce the shields. Protective enchantments layered the castle like veils, unseen but strong. The focus was on spells, words, and preparation. There were no great stone soldiers striding into battle. The defense felt practical, serious, and hidden, like real war often is. But the film wanted spectacle, and it delivered. Maggie Smith's performance lit the scene. Her McGonagall was strict, formidable, but with just enough mischief to remind us she loved her school deeply. She wasn't just protecting Hogwarts out of duty, she was defending it because it was home. When the statues roared into motion, it felt like Hogwarts itself was alive, unwilling to fall quietly. The filmmakers turned strategy into theatre. Rows of enchanted knights moved in perfect formation, ready to meet Voldemort's army head-on. Flames flickered across their carved shields. It wasn't subtle, but it was glorious. For viewers, it was the perfect promise. This would be a battle worth remembering, and no one who watched it could doubt that Professor McGonagall would fight to the last breath to protect every student within those ancient walls. Number 16. Harry and Voldemort's Tower Dive. Harry's hand locked around Voldemort's wrist. Their wands collided with a crack of green and red light. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, they spun together in mid-air, smoke trailing from their robes, faces twisted in fury. The camera followed them as they crashed from the high battlements of Hogwarts. They fell as one writhing shape, almost indistinguishable, crashing through towers and arches. It wasn't just a duel, it was a violent fusion, a fight that refused to separate them. In the book, the scene was starkly different. Rowling wrote, Harry and Voldemort circled each other, and there were cold, still spectators all around. There was no flying, no wrestling mid-air, just two enemies meeting eyes for the last time. Harry calmly explained the Elder Wand's loyalty before casting Expelliarmus to Voldemort's Avada Kedavra. It was quiet, deadly, watched by everyone who had survived. The film threw that quiet away. Instead, it chose chaos. They crashed into the courtyard, splitting apart as they landed. Harry's face was set, determined. Voldemort's features twisted in horror, as if realizing for the first time that death had finally come for him. The smoke peeled away from their robes, leaving two men again. They stood, panting before lunging back into the battle. Director David Yates made a choice. He wanted the audience to see how entangled Harry and Voldemort had become. It wasn't just prophecy. It was personal hatred, grief, and shared destiny. The image of them literally melting together into a single monstrous shape was grotesque and powerful. It wasn't subtle, but it was unforgettable. Fans were divided. Some loved the symbolism of that fall, the way it showed they couldn't destroy each other without embracing destruction themselves. Others missed the solemn, almost ritualistic, final duel of the book. That quiet circle in front of survivors felt more human, more true to Harry's mercy. The film's version was spectacle, but also tragedy played large. When they finally hit the ground and broke apart, Harry walked away with grim purpose. He wasn't just defeating Voldemort, he was tearing himself free of him. It was violent, ugly, but it was final. And in those last desperate moments, the film insisted that the line between hero and villain was terrifyingly thin, held apart only by choice. Number 17, Giant Protective Shield over Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall raised her wand and called out orders. Alongside her, Flitwick, Slughorn, and Kingsley Shacklebolt lifted theirs in perfect unison. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, the magic burst from them in streams of gold. Threads of light shot into the sky, weaving together like molten glass. A giant dome settled over Hogwarts, glowing with protective power. The students watched from the battlements, faces lit by the shimmering lines. In the book, Rowling described the protection simply. They heard the clang of the enchantments breaking. The spells were unseen. The fight was quieter, more desperate. There was no golden cage in the sky, but the film wanted everyone to see what the defenders were risking. It wanted magic to feel monumental. That shield became a promise. As long as it held, Hogwarts would not fall. Outside the barrier, Voldemort paced in the darkness. His pale face twisted in contempt. When he attacked, it wasn't subtle. The Elder Wand spit green lightning. The dome rippled and cracked. Sparks rained down on the courtyard. The camera stayed on the shield as it buckled under the weight of his fury. Each fracture felt like a heartbeat closer to doom. Ralph Fiennes played Voldemort as a force of nature here. His scream of frustration echoed across the hills. For a moment, even the Death Eaters flinched. Harry, watching from the walls, understood then that their defenses wouldn't last. It wasn't just a barrier falling, it was hope itself. The golden lines that had looked so strong now lay in pieces on the grass. Inside, the teachers and students braced themselves. You could see Molly Weasley pull Ginny close. Seamus Finnegan clutched his wand tighter. Even Filch looked afraid. The shield's collapse wasn't just an effect. It was a promise that the real battle was about to begin. The music fell silent except for the crack of breaking magic. That moment was pure cinema. It transformed words on a page into something the audience could feel in their chests. It didn't change the meaning of the story. It made it visible. Hogwarts had been a refugee for years. Watching its shield shatter was like watching childhood itself break, leaving only the fight. Number 18, Chase on the Tottenham Court Road Bridge. Harry, Ron, and Hermione burst from the cafe and onto the crowded London street. In Deathly Hallows Part 1, the camera swung wildly as they sprinted toward Lavender Bridge. Spells cracked in the night, sizzling like lightning. Hermione grabbed Harry's sleeve, shouting over the roar of traffic. Death Eaters swooped after them in clouds of black smoke, Muggles screamed, cars skidded, the city itself seemed to panic. In the book, Rowling described their escape very differently. They disapparated into the small alleyway behind the cafe. A few spells, a hurried plan, and they were gone. No destruction, no witnesses. It was careful, tense, and quiet. But the film wanted chaos. It turned a secretive getaway into a chase scene worthy of any action blockbuster. Emma Watson's Hermione led the charge, wand ready. Daniel Radcliffe's Harry ducked curses that tore chunks from the bridge railing. Rupert Grint's Ron stumbled, cursing under his breath. The city lights glinted on the Thames below them. Every step felt like a gamble with death. It was magic colliding with modern London in the worst way possible. Yaxley and Dolohov followed in swirling darkness. Their wands slashed the air. Green and red jets of light burned holes through steel and stone. Sparks flew as spells ricocheted off cars. London became a battleground, even if no one watching understood what they were seeing. It was a stark reminder that nowhere was safe anymore, not even among Muggles. Director David Yates filled the scene with noise and fear. The bridge became a funnel, trapping them. When they finally disapparated, it felt less like a plan and more like a desperate jump into the unknown. The film let you feel their heartbeats, hear their ragged breathing. No matter how well they planned, Voldemort's reach was everywhere. Some fans felt it was too dramatic, too Hollywood, but it worked. It reminded us that this war wasn't hidden anymore. The barrier between the wizarding world and the Muggle one was shattering. Voldemort's followers didn't care about secrecy or collateral damage. London itself was now a battlefield. When the trio vanished in a swirl of smoke, you could almost hear the bridge settling back into silence. The traffic would resume. Muggles would forget. But for Harry, Ron, and Hermione, there was no forgetting. The world had changed forever. Even the heart of the city couldn't shield them. Number 19, Fiendfyre in the Room of Requirement. Harry stumbled over fallen chairs as the walls of the Room of Requirement trembled. In Deathly Hallows Part 2, the Fiendfyre roared to life behind them. It wasn't just fire, it was a living creature. Flames twisted into giant serpents and wolves, snapping at the air with molten jaws. The heat rolled off the ground in shimmering waves. Draco Malfoy's pale face lit up in terror. In the book, Rowling described it with brutal simplicity. A great wave of heat crashed over them, and a fire like a living creature sprang at them from the darkness. There were no grand, clear shapes, just a chaotic inferno consuming everything. The film took that image and gave it monstrous form. Every twist of the flames felt purposeful, hunting them through the mountains of junk. Hermione's voice broke with panic. "Harry!" She scrambled over stacked cabinets as the fire lashed out. Ron grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. The camera caught their faces, streaked with sweat and fear. It wasn't just about finding the diadem, it was about surviving the next second. The room itself groaned, swallowing artifacts in a tidal wave of flame. Crabbe, the architect of their doom, stood frozen, wand still raised. The fire turned on him with vengeful hunger. The film didn't look away. His scream echoed above the crackle, cut off as the flames engulfed him. It was a horror that showed what dark magic truly cost. Harry turned, eyes wide with helplessness. Even Draco's mouth hung open in shock. The chase through the collapsing room was filmed like a nightmare. The floor split into chasms of fire, tables toppled in slow motion, the diadem rolled away, glowing with cursed light. Harry's hand snatched it just as a wall of flame surged forward. It felt like the end of the world trapped in one room. Director David Yates made sure every moment was thick with dread. The Fiendfyre wasn't just a threat, it was a lesson. Magic was powerful enough to destroy its wielder. Crabbe's death wasn't heroic or redemptive, it was a warning carved in heat and screams. When the trio finally collapsed on the floor outside, gasping for air, they were ash-streaked and shaken. Behind them, The door sealed itself shut. Harry looked back once, eyes haunted. The fire was gone, but the memory would stay forever. It wasn't just an escape, it was survival wrested from the jaws of something truly monstrous. Number 20, Hermione transforms into Bellatrix. Hermione held the goblet of polyjuice potion in trembling hands. The steam rose between her and Harry. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 2, she swallowed hard, her eyes darting to Ron. "I don't like this," she whispered. But there was no time for fear. She drank, gasping as her features twisted, her voice breaking. When the pain faded, Emma Watson was gone. In her place stood Helena Bonham Carter, clad in black, hair wild. But this was no ordinary Bellatrix Lestrange. It was Hermione's version, awkward, stiff, eyes too wide. She clutched her wand like she wasn't sure what it was for. Rowling only offered a quick line in the book. Hermione was Bellatrix. She looked strange and ill at ease. The film stretched that moment, letting us watch the transformation go wrong in real time. Helena Bonham Carter played it brilliantly. Her mouth twitched with uncertainty. Her steps were too precise. She looked around like someone sure she'd be caught at once. Ron gave her a once-over and nearly laughed. "Bloody hell," he said, voice cracking. Harry's eyes were sharp, scanning the room. "You have to act like her." Hermione in Bellatrix's body shuddered. She tried to snarl, but it came out like a strangled cough. The walk to Gringotts was agony. She minced across the marble floor, every movement too careful. The goblins squinted at her. She cleared her throat, voice shaking. I wish to enter my vault." The words were wrong. Too polite, too human. Harry winced at her side. Director David Yates gave these seconds the weight of hours. You could see the sweat beading at her hairline. Helena Bonham Carter let Hermione leak through Bellatrix's sneer. Her eyes kept flicking to the door, as if expecting to be dragged out and unmasked. The tension cracked once or twice into comedy. Griphook hissed at her. "You're going to blow it!" She snapped back, high-pitched and wrong. "I'm doing my best." It was Hermione's voice trapped in Bellatrix's mouth. Meanwhile, the real danger was close. The goblins muttered. One tapped his ledger, frowning. Ron, disguised with stubble and long hair, hovered too near Harry. They were 3 children in costumes, standing in the middle of the enemy's stronghold. But when Helena Bonham Carter squared her shoulders and forced the real Bellatrix's snarl onto her face, you saw Hermione's courage flicker to life. She barked, "Take me to my vault!" The goblins recoiled. For a heartbeat, the act worked. This scene became unforgettable not because of special effects, but because it let 2 actresses play one role at once. Hermione's fear and brilliance, Bellatrix's cruelty and elegance merged in one trembling body. It was a lesson in disguise, in acting in the cost of war, and it gave the audience a rare chance to laugh in the middle of the dark. Number 21. Voldemort feels the death of Horcruxes. Lord Voldemort stood alone in the Forbidden Forest. His pale face was turned toward the sky, but there was no triumph in his red eyes. In the film Deathly Hallows Part 2, he suddenly screamed. The sound was raw and inhuman. Birds scattered from the trees. Even his followers flinched at the edges of the clearing. Nagini's death hadn't even happened yet, but another Horcrux was gone. He felt it like a blade in his chest. His scream wasn't just rage, it was pain, a piece of him ripped away forever. In the book, Rowling was subtler. Voldemort knew, he felt it. She described a chill, a whisper of knowledge he refused to accept. He didn't collapse, he didn't scream. He told himself he was invincible until the very end. The movie chose to show what denial couldn't hide. Ralph Fiennes played Voldemort as a creature coming apart at the seams. Each Horcrux was more than insurance. It was a part of his soul, raw and bloody. Watching him feel them die made the cost of Harry's mission real. Inside the ruined castle, Voldemort's rage was just as vivid. When the cup of Hufflepuff melted under basilisk venom, he staggered. He grabbed at a pillar in the dark hall of hanging bats. The creatures exploded into flight around him. His wand crackled with stray magic. Bellatrix Lestrange watched from a distance, her eyes wide with fear. Even she seemed to understand he was changing, losing his grip. He spun on her, teeth bared, spitting commands. She recoiled like a whipped animal. The sound design made it worse. His scream was layered with echoes, like dozens of voices wailing at once. It reminded the audience that Voldemort wasn't one man anymore. He was splintered, broken. Every Horcrux was a prison. Each destruction set a prisoner free. When Nagini finally fell, the connection snapped like a chain breaking. In the film, Voldemort howled in agony, clutching at the empty space where she had been. The Dark Lord who once whispered, "There is no good and evil, only power," suddenly looked powerless. Harry Potter watched this from the shadows. He didn't celebrate. He knew what it meant. The thing that had kept Voldemort alive was failing, but it also meant Voldemort was more dangerous than ever. Director David Yates wanted the audience to see every loss, to feel it. So we weren't only cheering for Harry. We were witnessing a man being unmade, piece by piece. The Death Eaters' faces told their own story. When Voldemort screamed, some backed away, others fell to their knees. Their faith cracked as clearly as the Elder Wand in his hand. This was no silent, dignified end for the Dark Lord. It was messy, terrifying, a creature lashing out because it was finally learning what mortality felt like. The visual choice gave the final battle weight. Every victory had a cost. Every Horcrux destroyed wasn't just strategy, it was violence against a soul, even an evil one. And when Voldemort finally fell in the courtyard, there was no scream left in him. The film had already shown us he had screamed it all out along the way. Number 22, Evacuation of Students and Families from Hogwarts. Great Hall flickered with candlelight. In Deathly Hallows, Part 2, voices rose in fear. Parents clutched their children. Older students tried to look brave. Professors moved among them with urgent whispers. The walls trembled with distant explosions. Professor McGonagall stood at the front. Her face was set in grim lines. "All underage students must evacuate," she ordered. Her voice did not shake. She would allow no argument. Around her, teachers guided the terrified toward the doors. The camera lingered on the small details. A girl in Hufflepuff robes sobbing into her brother's shoulder. A Ravenclaw prefect waving his first years along, voice cracking. Dean Thomas gripping Seamus Finnegan's arm, trying to decide whether to fight or flee. In the book, Rowling mentioned evacuation simply. They were shepherding the younger students out of the hall. It was duty, quickly done. The film expanded it into a moment of mass panic. A reminder that Hogwarts was a school first, a battlefield second. Hermione Granger met Harry's eyes across the hall. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then she turned and bent down to reassure a small girl who wouldn't let go of her doll. She put on a calm smile, but her knuckles were white. Ron Weasley helped an elderly witch move to the line for the secret passage. His voice was too loud, too cheerful, as if trying to convince himself everything was fine. "Come on, nearly there." But his eyes flicked constantly to the doors, expecting Death Eaters to burst through. Neville Longbottom stood by the entrance, jaw clenched. He refused to leave. His clothes were dirty. His hair hung in his eyes. "I'm staying," he told Professor Sprout. She only nodded, tears in her eyes. The camera cut to the tunnels below. Students stumbled through the gloom, guided by floating lanterns. Some held hands, others dragged trunks. A Slytherin boy wept openly, no one mocking him now. The fear was too real. Outside, parents waited by the secret exits. They grabbed their children, kissed their faces. Some argued. A mother clung to her teenage son. "Please, don't go back in." He shook his head, tears streaming, and broke from her grip. Even Filch was there, limping along, barking at the line to keep moving. His gruff insults sounded almost protective. He herded them out as if they were his charges after all. Director David Yates shot it with handheld cameras. The motion was shaky, urgent. It felt like news footage of a disaster zone. Faces blurred, voices overlapped. You could feel the press of bodies. It was the ordinary side of war, often forgotten in magic. The fear of losing your child, the refusal to abandon your home, the choice to fight, even if you were no warrior. By showing this, the film reminded us what was at stake, not just ancient walls and enchanted artifacts, but the lives of hundreds of children, the love of families who had sent them here to be safe. When the final defenses fell, we remembered their faces, the ones who escaped and the ones who stayed behind, ready to fight for the only home they had ever known. Number 23, Harry talks to Lupin about his son. In Deathly Hallows, Part 2, the camera caught a quiet corner of the Great Hall. Soldiers of the Order huddled around, checking wands and bandages, but Harry didn't see the weapons. He saw Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks standing close together, fingers just brushing. Their faces were drawn. The air crackled with unspoken fear. Harry crossed the floor to them. His steps were hesitant. He wasn't the chosen one in that moment, just a boy who wanted something to hold on to. He cleared his throat. "Is it a boy or a girl?" he asked. His voice trembled. Lupin turned. His eyes were tired, the shadows under them deep as grave dirt. But they lit up for a second. "It's a boy," he said, voice low and warm. There was something like wonder in it. Even in that hall of ruin, he could still feel hope. Harry swallowed. He tried to smile. "Who's going to be godfather?" The question landed like a lifeline. For a heartbeat, the war fell away. There was only this small new thing, fragile and bright. Tonks squeezed Lupin's hand, her knuckles white. She didn't speak. Her hair was its natural brown, no energy left for colors. She looked at Harry with raw gratitude. Lupin didn't hesitate. "You are," he said. His voice cracked. He wasn't a soldier then. He was a father asking a friend to look after his child if the worst happened. In the book, Rowling let this truth arrive later. Teddy Lupin, Remus and Tonks' son, Harry had been made his godfather. A line tucked into aftermath, but the film gave it a face, a trembling, desperate promise. Harry's eyes burned. He nodded once, too choked to answer. He didn't want to be godfather because that meant accepting they might die tonight. But he also knew he would never say no. The hall was alive with shouting. Armor clanked, spells whined in the air. But in that small circle of candlelight, 3 people tried to believe there would be something left when dawn came. David Thewlis played Lupin with such softness. A man who had spent his life feeling cursed but still daring to love. When he looked at Tonks, it wasn't just partnership, it was terror he'd leave her alone to raise their son. Harry's face was a map of every loss he'd ever known. James and Lily, Sirius, Dumbledore. He wasn't going to let Teddy Lupin become another boy without a family. Tonks wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. She turned toward the door, ready to fight. Lupin brushed her hair back and followed. Neither said goodbye, neither could. When the camera pulled away, it showed them from behind, 2 figures about to vanish into the storm of war, and Harry standing frozen, realizing what he had just agreed to carry. It was only a moment, but it reminded everyone watching what was at stake. Not just Hogwarts, not just the wizarding world, but families, futures, children who deserved to know their parents had tried to make them safe. Number 24. Duel in the cafe on Tottenham Court Road. Harry, Ron and Hermione stumbled into the cafe on Tottenham Court Road, breathless from their apparition. Rain slicked their hair. Neon signs flickered outside. Inside, the cafe was cold and grimy, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the silence. Hermione wiped her eyes and tried to catch her breath. Harry pushed his glasses up, glancing around with paranoid eyes. In the film, Deathly Hallows Part 1, the mood was sharp and grim. The 3 sat at a battered table, steam rising from chipped mugs. For a second, they almost looked normal, 3 teenagers hiding from the rain, but their eyes kept darting to the door. They knew they had no protection now, no grim old place, no order. The bell above the door jingled. 2 strangers in black stepped in. They didn't smile, didn't look at the menu. Their wands appeared in their hands in a flash of movement. Hermione's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the look in their eyes. Death Eaters. Rowling's book described it quickly. 2 people in muggle clothes, they were Death Eaters. The fight was over in moments, spells exchanged in panic. But the film stretched it out, making you feel every heartbeat. The Death Eaters spat curses that shattered the Formica tables, coffee sprayed across the floor. Harry dove behind the counter as Ron grabbed Hermione's arm. Plates exploded in shrapnel. A mirror cracked in a spiderweb. "Stupefy!" Harry bellowed, his voice raw with fear. The red light hit the Death Eater square in the chest, sending him crashing through chairs. Ron shouted a shield charm that sparked against the tiles. Hermione's curses were fast and frantic, light flashing in her eyes. The sound was deafening. The neon light outside cast green and red onto the walls like blood. For the first time, the trio fought for their lives without Dumbledore's safety net. There was no plan, just terror and instinct. When it ended, the cafe was wrecked, chairs overturned, tables scorched black. Ron had blood on his temple. Harry was shaking so badly he dropped his wand twice before picking it up. Hermione wiped at tears she didn't realize were there. She walked over to the stunned Death Eaters lying crumpled on the floor. With her voice shaking, she whispered the memory charm. Obliviate. Their eyes went blank. Harry watched her, his jaw tight. He hated it, hated what they were becoming. But he didn't stop her, because it was the only choice left. They left without looking back. The rain seemed colder, the streetlights harsher. The silence that followed them out of the door was heavier than any scream. Director David Yates shot the whole scene in harsh shadows, making the cafe feel like a trap, a place that should have been safe but had turned into a war zone. It reminded viewers that the wizarding world wasn't magical anymore. It was a battlefield, and even Muggle London wasn't spared. As they vanished into the night, you could see it on their faces. They were fugitives now, and the world they had grown up in was gone. Number 25. Death Eaters burning the Burrow. Smoke coiled into the darkening sky above the Burrow. Flames licked the wooden walls, crackling with a hungry roar. In Half-Blood Prince, the film paused on Molly and Arthur Weasley standing in the grass, arms wrapped tight around each other. Their eyes were wet and wide, reflecting the fire that was destroying their home. There was no such scene in the book. Rowling never burned the Burrow at all. Christmas at the Burrow was everything Harry had hoped for. That's how she wrote it. Warm, safe. But the film chose devastation. It wanted us to see the war was already at their door. Bellatrix Lestrange stood in the reeds, her voice rising in mad laughter. Her wand spit orange sparks. She seemed to dance with glee at the destruction she had wrought. Fenrir Greyback snarled beside her, teeth flashing. They weren't just killing, they were sending a message. Harry sprinted after them, wand raised. He shouted curses that fizzled in the wet grass. Ginny was at his side, her hair flying behind her. But they couldn't stop it. The house was gone before they even reached the porch. Molly's scream cut through everything. It wasn't magical. It wasn't brave. It was just a mother's sound of loss. Arthur tightened his arms around her, his own face blank with shock. He didn't know what to say. The camera held on them. For once, there was no spell that could fix this. No wand movement to repair the life they'd built. The Burrow had always been their sanctuary, patched together with love and mismatched furniture. Now it was cinders. Harry turned back and saw them through the flames. The family that had taken him in. The place that felt more like home than anywhere else. His jaw clenched. He understood then, in a new way, why they had to fight. Ginny wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She didn't speak. She just reached for Harry's wrist, pulling him back before he could chase the Death Eaters further into the night. Even Bill and Fleur's wedding plans, so full of hope, were nothing but an afterthought in that moment. The war wasn't waiting for anyone to be ready. It was here. Director David Yates made the flames high and violent, silhouetting Arthur and Molly in the flicker. They looked small, fragile, not warriors, but people with everything to lose. Ron wasn't there to see it, but you could imagine his reaction. Fury, terror, the knowledge that nowhere, not even the Burrow, was beyond Voldemort's reach. When the fire died to smouldering embers, there was only silence. No comforting magic to fix the charred timbers. Just blackened earth where family dinners and laughter used to echo. The film didn't need them to say anything. The horror was enough. It burned itself into Harry's memory and ours. And when he finally turned away, you could see it in his eyes. The understanding that this war wasn't about glory. It was about protecting the people who had given him a home. Number 26, Hogwarts in Flames. The scene in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, when Hogwarts burns under a crimson sky, is one of the most visually devastating moments in the entire film series. Fire devours the once imposing castle, embers whirl on the wind like hateful fairies, and the towers fall in great showers of stone. The filmmakers chose to emphasize destruction on a truly apocalyptic scale. Long panning shots reveal staircases collapsing into chasms, roofs caving in, and the Great Hall roof yawning open to the night. Yet in J.K. Rowling's novel, although the battle is described as violent and ruinous, there is no mention of flames consuming the whole structure. Instead, Hogwarts remains a battered but standing fortress, a survivor of its own war. The cinematic choice turns the school itself into a casualty, suggesting that the safety and wonder of childhood have been permanently razed. In the book, the Battle of Hogwarts carries a harrowing sense of loss and ruin, but the destruction feels personal and specific rather than grandiose and symbolic. Rowling describes huge parts of the walls blown away and gaping holes in corridors, but there is no sweeping conflagration. The Great Hall, where the living count their dead, is battered but intact. She writes, "The house tables were gone, and the room was crowded with the injured, the dead, the mourning. The war is ugly and ruinous, but the castle, as the story's heart, survives." By contrast, the movie's choice to show Hogwarts in flames is a statement of total loss, a kingdom of childhood dreams reduced to cinders. The walls that promise safety for Harry, Ron and Hermione have failed, and now all that's left is the scorched earth of adult responsibility. This choice to burn Hogwarts on screen did not come from nowhere. The filmmakers knew their audience had grown with the series. They chose to mirror that growth by showing the death of innocence in the most literal terms. The castle ablaze is an unforgettable image of war's cost, not just death, but the ruin of hope. It is the destruction of the unspoken promise that some places are sacred and untouchable. In the book, McGonagall restores Hogwarts after the battle. There is a sense of possibility of rebuilding, yet the film's fire suggests that some losses are absolute, that what burns is not easily rebuilt. It is a vision of grief without comfort, designed to haunt viewers long after the credits roll. It is worth remembering that for Harry Potter, Hogwarts was never just a school. It was the first true home he had ever known. In Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Rowling writes, it was the best house he had ever been in. In destroying Hogwarts so thoroughly on screen, the filmmakers strip Harry of his refuge. It's not just stone and mortar falling, it's the memory of safety. The audience knows that Harry is forced to grow up forever in that moment. The film's flames are a funeral pyre for childhood, making clear that even magic cannot protect you from war's cruelty. One of the film's most striking shots is the wide view of the castle's burning ruins from across the Black Lake. Smoke rises in massive columns, silhouetted against a blood-red dawn. It is a vision reminiscent of real historical images of bombed cities: Dresden, Hiroshima, London's Blitz. That's no accident. The filmmakers draw on the universal horror of wartime destruction to communicate the stakes. While the book keeps the battle inside Hogwarts walls, in corridors and on grounds, the movie explodes the violence outward, making it impossible to ignore. It turns Hogwarts into a stand-in for any city reduced to rubble by war's appetite. Yet the book's more restrained approach may be truer to Rowling's thematic goals. She uses Hogwarts not only as a battleground, but as a symbol of continuity. Even after Voldemort is defeated, the survivors gather in the Great Hall to mourn and to plan. Rowling writes, "The battle was over, the Great Hall was crowded with the wounded, the dead, the mourning, and those who had survived. The hall is battered, but it still stands. The living make their way there to regroup. This choice offers hope that after horror there can be rebuilding. By choosing not to burn Hogwarts to the ground, Rowling preserves the idea that evil can be defeated without obliterating all that is good." The film, however, chooses finality. Flames consume the castle like a beast unleashed. When Harry walks through the ruins to find Voldemort, the damage is catastrophic. Great towers lie broken like snapped bones. The bridge collapses in roaring fire. The cinematography lingers on the destruction, making it feel biblical in scope. The filmmakers want viewers to feel that nothing will ever be the same. While the book speaks of the cost of war, the movie shows it in the most violent terms. This difference reveals the film's desire to leave no doubt about the price paid. This tension between book and film versions also reflects the difference in medium. A book can evoke horror through emotion and suggestion. A film must show it. It must make the intangible tangible. When a reader imagines huge parts of the walls blown away, they might picture cracks, missing stones, collapsed corridors. The film chooses to depict firestorm and ruin because visual spectacle demands it. There's no subtlety in flames licking the sky. The message is unmistakable. Hogwarts, as we knew it, is dead. Evil was strong enough to destroy the unthinkable. In choosing this path, the filmmakers trade nuance for symbolism. The book allows the possibility that even after horror, something remains to rebuild. But the film's ruined Hogwarts is a monument to despair, a warning. It suggests that when evil is tolerated, even the safest places can be annihilated. This is not just about Harry's personal loss. It's about the loss of innocence for a whole generation, both of characters and viewers who grew up with the series. The ruin of Hogwarts is the ruin of the promise that there is any truly safe space. Consider how the film also changes the sense of time in the battle. In the book, the fighting is chaotic but continuous. Rowling moves the reader from duel to duel, describing deaths in quick succession: Fred, Lupin, Tonks, forcing us to feel the dizzying cruelty of battle. Fred's eyes stared without seeing, the ghost of his last laugh still etched upon his face. The book's horror is in the details of personal loss. The film, on the other hand, pauses to showcase destruction on a vast scale. It zooms out to show the burning skyline. In doing so, it sacrifices some intimacy but delivers a grand tragedy. The viewer mourns not just people but the entire world they loved. It is also important to note that the film's choice to burn Hogwarts is not without precedent in the series' visual language. In Half-Blood Prince, the Death Eaters burn the Burrow to the ground in a terrifying, inexplicable addition not found in the book. Fire becomes a motif for evil's power to desecrate home. By the time Deathly Hallows Part 2 arrives, the audience has been primed to associate flames with the destruction of love and family. Burning Hogwarts is the logical culmination of that symbolism. It is the ultimate act of sacrilege, turning the last sanctuary into ashes. Rowling herself resisted final destruction in the book for thematic reasons. She wants her survivors to have somewhere to grieve and rebuild. In the epilogue, Hogwarts is back to its functional self. Harry sends his own son to the school that once saved him. There is a promise of continuity, of a world made safe again. This is not denial of trauma, but an argument for hope. The book insists that evil can be beaten without losing everything. The film, in contrast, revels in ruin because it understands cinematic drama demands ruin to feel real. There is also a subtle question of blame in the movie's burning Hogwarts. The image implicates everyone who failed to resist Voldemort early enough. The ministry that appeased him, the public that turned a blind eye, the teachers who refused to see warning signs, all are complicit in the destruction. The flames are judgment. In the book, the damage feels more like the price of battle, an unavoidable tragedy. The film makes it seem like punishment for collective cowardice. It's a bleaker morale, one that refuses to absolve even the well-meaning. And yet, despite this vast destruction, both book and film agree on one truth. Hogwarts matters because it represents safety and possibility. The contrast between the two media only emphasizes the importance of that symbol. When it is wounded or destroyed, the audience feels it viscerally. Even in the book's more restrained damage, Rowling ensures Hogwarts is changed forever. The repairs that will follow are not erasure, but memorial. The school will never forget the blood spilled in its halls. That truth remains even when the film takes the symbolism to a more catastrophic extreme. It is easy to see why the filmmakers chose this path. The Harry Potter films had matured alongside their audience. By Deathly Hallows. Part 2. Most viewers were older teenagers or adults who could appreciate the darker themes. The burning of Hogwarts is a cinematic shorthand for lost innocence and a necessary confrontation with mortality. It is a visual poem about the death of childhood, designed to scar the viewer just as war scars survivors. While the book offers possibility of healing, the film refuses comfort. It is as if the filmmakers want us to stay haunted. One might also consider the performances set against the burning backdrop. Maggie Smith's McGonagall stands among the ruins with quiet devastation. She does not cry or scream, but the weight of loss is in her eyes. That subtle acting grounds the spectacle in human grief. The fire is epic, but the pain is intimate. It reminds viewers that destruction is never abstract. It is always felt most sharply by those who loved what was lost. This is true to Rowling's intention, even if the scale differs. Furthermore, the burning Hogwarts in the film acts as a crucible for Harry's final choice. As he walks through the wreckage to confront Voldemort, he knows there is nothing left to save but lives. The physical destruction means the symbolic stakes are higher. He must end this or see even the memory of Hogwarts wiped away forever. In the book, the battered but standing school offers hope that victory will mean survival. The film offers only obliteration if Harry fails. That heightens the drama in purely cinematic terms. Ultimately, the difference between book and film reflects two valid interpretations of the same truth. War destroys. Rowling chose to show that destruction in lives lost, families shattered, trust broken. The filmmakers chose to show it in flames and rubble. Both are right, both hurt. The burning Hogwarts is not canon, but it is an honest interpretation of the emotional reality of war. It asks viewers to consider what they would be willing to sacrifice to stop evil and what it costs to wait too long to fight. It is a judgment without mercy, and that makes it effective. For those who grew up with Harry, Ron, and Hermione, seeing Hogwarts burn was a betrayal and a reckoning. It meant admitting that magic does not make one safe forever, that evil can win if given an inch, that even a castle built of ancient spells can fall if courage fails. It is a moment designed to stay with viewers long after the final duel ends, to remind them that victory always comes too late for someone. It is the price of being human, even in a magical world. The filmmakers forced us to watch it burn so we could never pretend it was untouchable. It is here that the film achieves a brutal kind of honesty. It does not promise that all can be rebuilt exactly as it was. It does not comfort with illusions of untouched beauty. Instead, it shows the cost in roaring flame and falling stone. The audience must decide what that cost means. Is it a warning, a condemnation, or simply the truth that nothing good can survive unchallenged? The film refuses to answer. And in that refusal it becomes more than an adaptation. It becomes a meditation on loss, sacrifice, and the hard work of making anything safe ever again.